Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark,
And I'm Midge Munster.
and today we're gonna talk about something that's a little bit general spooky, a little bit death related, just a whole lot of weird, fun stuff.
All of my
So
favorite things.
all the good things. So I believe back in our spooky travel episode, I mentioned that while I was in Germany, I visited a bejeweled skeleton
Yes,
who
you
was on
did.
display in Munich. And her name was Saint Mundisha, and you may think that a bejeweled skeleton must be pretty rare, but they are more common than you think. We're going to talk about
And
some
not just with
weird
home goods.
Catholic stuff today.
Weird Catholic stuff.
Ay. So, why do Catholic churches around Europe have fancy disco skeletons? I'm going to tell you why. So, the majority of info in this episode came from a Smithsonian Magazine article entitled Meet the Fantastically Bejeweled Skeletons of Catholicism's Forgotten Past.
Amazing.
Right. And that's by Rachel Newer. And it is mostly about a book called Heavenly Bodies, Cult Treasures and Spectacular Saints from the Catacombs by Paul Koudounaris, who is the modern researcher who's really kind of brought these back into the minds of the death-obsessed public like myself. So as someone who grew up Catholic, I can tell you that Catholicism is goth as hell. So
Things I never thought I would heard
there you
said on
go.
this podcast.
Yes, I have my disagreements with the doctrine and the organization, but the aesthetics are extremely good. They are very good. Historically, Catholic churches tended to be very blingy, have a lot of like art, statues, fancy jeweled stuff, religious relics, aka bones and pieces of saints generally. And this is something that people who are not Catholic have historically not been a big fan of. So in the 1500s, there were a lot of waves of Protestant sentiment in Europe, basically being like, these Catholics and all their religious icons are bad news and we got to wreck their shit. So there would be riots and ransacking churches. A lot of churches were entirely stripped of all of their like art and relics. And obviously, the people who went to those churches were like, this is a huge bummer.
Darn. Darn, my church has been
Darn.
burned to the ground. Yeah.
They took all my shit. And then in 1578, some vineyard workers outside Rome discovered a hidden catacomb that was just chock-a-block full of old dead bodies. They estimate 500 to 750,000
Oh my
corpses in this
goodness.
catacomb.
That
Yeah,
is not
I
the
knew.
number
I was
I
like,
was
"You're
expecting.
wait for that thousand on the end there."
I was already like, wow, 750 bodies. That's crazy.
Yes. So the
700,000 bodies?
yep, potentially. That's what they
And you said
say.
this was outside of Rome?
Yes.
Whoa.
So these seem to be from kind of around the time of like the first 3 centuries of Christianity, and the Vatican was like, hell yes, because they just had a super great idea for how to replace all these churches that lost their relics.
Oh no.
So the official name for these fancy skeletons are the catacomb saints. So obviously these bodies were found in a catacomb and maybe were saints. So basically the Vatican was like, all right, we're going to go through all of these dead bodies and we're going to find the really holy ones. And
Which is determined in what way?
yes, good question, Mitch. How would one do that? So the first way is if they like the kind of like, their little skeleton nook was marked with an M, that must mean that they were a martyr. And definitely
Okay.
not that they were named Marcus, which was one of the most common names in Rome.
It was actually like M for murderer.
Right. And the second way that you can do that is that martyr bones cast a golden glow and have a sweet smell to them.
Oh, of
So
course.
teams of psychics would go through the catacombs and just do a skeleton vibe check and find the ones that had this excellent aura and that were definitely holy.
Well, We all gotta believe in something.
Yep. So once a skeleton was identified as a martyr and given a name, it was time to head out. So there were special skeleton delivery monks who would transport the relics out to their new homes. So the majority of these went to Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, where there had been the highest anti-Catholic sentiment and like more churches were ransacked. So Paul Cousineris, who is the kind of researcher behind this, estimates that 2,000 full skeletons were sent out, and
Oh my
also some
goodness.
places probably just got like a jawbone or like some partial remains.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
Because now I was not raised Catholic,
Mm,
but like Catholics are pretty hardcore about the sentiment of like burial, right? Like of that
yes.
being part of like getting to heaven.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing because they're also very into like this kind of idea of like a relic and like a holy body and like have it. So like it was very common to like have like this is like a saint's toe, or people would be like this is something
Dead
that
man's
Jesus once
toe.
touched. Yeah, dead man's toe. So
So this wasn't considered like desecration to move the body from its final resting place because they were martyrs or
yeah,
holy people.
so they're honoring these dead
Okay.
people
So it's an
who are
honor to
holy,
be
so
moved
it's
from their
fine.
rest. Sure.
Yes.
Perfect. I
There
don't know if I align with that personally, but pop off, monks. Like
I'm not gonna say that Catholicism doesn't have some discrepancies. Um, but there you go. So once your skeleton was delivered, it's time to dress it up and make it snazzy. So this is something that I super love. So this was primarily done by nuns, and I know that this is was definitely like something very serious. They probably all felt like very like um respectful and like sacred about this, but I just
sure.
love craft
Like
night with the
arts and
girls,
craft time with
bejeweling
the
your
nuns.
skeleton, just like
Did
hanging out with your girlfriends.
did you bring your bedazzler, Sister Catherine? Like they have those little,
Right?
you know those little sticks you use for rhinestones that have the sticky silicone end.
Yes.
So like they all have their little rhinestone
Yep, just
sticks.
boop boop. And like how fun of a party would that be to get like a full-size skeleton and just have people over to like
Heavenly
decorate it?
Bodies night at the Munster House.
Yes.
I know what
So
we're
good.
doing next time we get together, Penny.
Yes. So step one is to spin a fine mesh gauze to wrap every bone with. So this is just like a super delicate, almost invisible fabric. Like it looks like the most like delicate like pantyhose,
Okay.
basically. So if you look closely at these like images of skeletons, you can see that this net is over them. So that's meant to protect the bones from dust, but it also gives you a surface which you can decorate. So then you have to reassemble the bones, and not everyone was great at this. So um, this
Not everyone
researcher who,
had a degree in
yep,
anatomy.
was like traveling around, he was like, yeah, some of these bones were like mismatched, like the sizes were definitely not right. So maybe you got like it switched somewhere, or things were like not attached to where they were supposed to go.
They're like,
But
the jawbone's connected to the hip bone. Like,
uh,
just like not at all.
Right. The girls are doing their best. So step three is to add gems, jewelry, fancy clothing. So this was like a big thing that like, like the local nobility, the rich people in your village would like donate their nice stuff as like a show of respect to the skeletons. Apparently also like a lot of the nuns would put like their own personal jewelry on a skeleton. Sometimes they would make them wax faces, and this was supposed to make
Hate
them
that.
less creepy.
Yeah.
100% makes them a million times creepier.
Yeah, I positively despise that idea.
Yes. But this process could take 2 to 3 years. Like this was
Oh,
like an
wow.
incredibly intricate process, and Paul actually said that obviously like there's no like record of who did what, but like in the time looking at skeletons, he started to like be like, oh, I think these were done by like the same person, and like
Mhm.
noticing like artistic touches that seem to kind of like reoccur between some skeletons, which is just really cool. I think that's a neat, it's a weird piece of art, but it is still a method of expression.
Still has its own little signatures.
Yes. So once your skeleton was done and decorated, they would go to their church that they're going to live in. They often had like a special case or like a throne or something that they sat in, and they were basically like the patron saint of the community and were very much beloved. So the one that I saw is kind of like reclining on like a chaise, but like within like a glass like
Hmm.
box. And that was pretty common throughout theirs. Most churches would keep like a miracle book and write down all the good things happened that they give credit to this
Attributed to the
skeleton
skeleton.
for. Yep. So my favorite part, so I'm just going to read this full quote,
Yes,
was
please.
inevitably, following a holy body's arrival, the first child born would be baptized under its name. For example, Valentine for a boy, Valentina for a girl. In extreme cases, half the children born that year would possess the skeleton's name.
What?
So you just have a town of people where like a ton of kids in some year were just named after your village skeleton.
That's the most goth thing I've heard.
Exactly,
More
right?
so than
It's
that just beat out Mary Shelley for the original goth. Like, oh yeah, I'm named after my city
I'm named
skeleton.
after my town
It's a
skeleton.
Catholic thing. You wouldn't get it.
Exactly.
And
And
like
that's just how
also
you do.
are they so that I'm assuming because we're these are found in catacombs, they're more or less quote unmarked graves.
Hmm.
Like so they're spinning tales. They're creating backstories and names for these saints or
Yeah, yeah. So my understanding is that the Vatican is like, okay, this is Saint so and so, and they send it to the church, and like, of course, a little village church is going to be like, well, if the Vatican says that this is who this is Saint
if
Valentine, then it's
if
Saint
they say
Valentine.
so. And I'm asking as if you're like the world expert on bejeweled skeletons, but like, is the premise like, oh, this is just a martyr, or is it like this is Saint Valentine? He drove the rats out of Ireland. Like, I like, are they good? That's a
Yeah, I mean, in
perfect example.
at least my understanding is that it would that it would presumably you would tie it back to the known saint that you were aware of.
Oh,
I'm
so
not
they're claiming these are
100%
the
sure.
bones of known saints.
I guess I'm not. I couldn't. I could be wrong about that. But well, when they're like, well, but that would make sense, right? Like you wouldn't just be like, oh, this is some other Saint Valentine.
This is bamboozlement on the highest degree.
Yeah, it's some wild stuff. I mean, Catholicism really loves their symbolism, and there's just so much like folk magic that is part of like
Hmm.
ancient Catholic traditions, as you can see here, where people are like, "Thank you for this wonderful miracle skeleton."
Thank you for this
Like,
body, Vatican. Yeah.
yep, and you just like it's the same way. I mean, I know that not to make light of it, I know that that's like something that is part of like major schisms in like Christianity and stuff, because people will
Hmm.
be like, Catholics worship Mary and they shouldn't because Mary's not a god. But Catholicism has all, at least from my understanding of it, has always just kind of been like anything kind of holy that we can get our hands on, like we're gonna hold on to that.
We go and grab that.
We're gonna
Wow.
grab that.
Fascinating.
But
Very
yes,
interesting.
sadly, as the world became more modern, skeletons started to lose their favor. And in the late 18th century, the Emperor of Austria declared that churches had to get rid of any relics that didn't have like definitive proof of their provenance, which obviously these skeletons did not have.
Sure.
And there were also apparently at the time, like there were a lot of Protestant writings that were like talking about Catholic necromancers because we were all out here with our very special skeleton friends. Um, but yeah, so a lot of these skeletons were stripped of all of their jewels and taken down. And people in villages, were really upset because they'd been honoring these skeletons for like 100 years now. And
Well,
suddenly
sure.
someone was like, guess what? This isn't a thing. Like, we don't believe this anymore. And they're like, what? I'm named my father. Me and my father are both named after a skeleton,
With that's my namesake you're talking about.
right? And it's sad. But not all of the skeletons were destroyed. So some were tucked away in cellars or boxes, or just kind of forgotten about. And In the research, Paul Kusnera said that he's found about 250 that were still intact that he photographed for the
Wow.
Heavenly Bodies book. Apparently, he found one that was like in a crate in like a parking garage or something.
Oh,
Like people
casual.
just kind of like stored them wherever they could. And as I said, like the one that I saw is still in St. Peter's in Munich, but many are now in disrepair. And obviously, these are like small local churches that don't have like the funds for like an artistic restoration or
Right.
anything, which is too bad because they are extremely cool. Like, it was really neat to see it. And obviously, we don't know this person's true story, but I would. I feel like every time we do a death episode, I'm coming up with new death plans. And I think I did mention this in the past, but I would like to be a bejeweled skeleton
I'll get on
and
that.
just hang out and be glitzy and sparkly and have people admire me and be like, thank you, Penny, for all of your miracles.
I do like the idea of them like doing the Burt Reynolds like lounging
Yes.
skeleton pose across a chaise. I think that's very fanciful and nice.
Right? Like, that's just that's not a bad life.
I also can't stop thinking now about, so have, I'm sure you have seen this year at Home Goods. They have these bejeweled skeletons that are
Yes.
wearing
Yes.
crowns, and it looks, I just took a quick goog of, I mean, I had looked up the one you saw
Mhm.
when we talked about it originally, but I was just gathering, looking at some other photos just now. They're really beautiful,
Yes,
gorgeous.
I highly recommend looking them up and admiring them. If you're a fan, I
Yeah,
really want to buy a copy of this Heavenly Bodies book so I could just look at them
definitely.
all the time.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. But I would say that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I would say that the concept definitely rolled over into these home goods skeletons.
Someone
Someone
they
somewhere saw
they're
this.
very catacomb saint core.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought they were kind of garish originally, but I'm like, well,
They've got
maybe
a
it's like a
little
fun
bit of a
religious
historic
iconography moment.
connection, right? Right? And probably not what Home Goods was thinking of when they put it
No,
together, but
certainly
I'm
not.
sure they had it in their brain. They were like, "Ooh, a fancy skeleton."
Hmm.
But no, I do kind of want to like DIY myself a
Get
fancy
your
skeleton now.
get yourself a 12-foot Home Depot skeleton and
Yes.
turn it
Oh
into a
my god,
catacomb
my
saint.
12-foot catacomb saint. That would be
Not it
so
sounded like
good.
My Little Pony, but like my 12-foot catacomb
Catacomb
saint.
saint. Ah. Uh, but yeah, this was just a weird little thing. I was trying to think of like things that I am into and that I wanted to delve deeper into. And I thought about doing just kind of like the concept of Catholic relics in general because
Yeah,
they do be having some
they do be.
weird connections to death and dead body parts. And
Can I go
there's
off
a
topic
whole
for like 4
yeah,
seconds
go for it.
about something I just learned? Because again, I know nothing about Catholicism,
Hmm.
and I have a friend, well, my friend Anne, that does the hair art.
Oh yeah.
She has like a Catholic bathroom in her home that's just all
Yeah.
religious iconography and saint stuff. There is this very thin line between like that type of imagery and gothic decor. Like they kind of
Yes.
intermingle, I feel like. Um, but we were out antiquing together, and she pointed at this cabinet and she was like, "Oh, I've been wanting one of these so badly." And I was like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Oh, it's a last rites cabinet." And I was like, "A what? I've never heard of this." And are you familiar with this? Apparently you have like a cabinet in your home that, in case the priest can't make it when you're dying to like bless you in time, you have like a break glass in case of emergency last rites cabinet with like a little wafer and a cup of wine ready to
Oh
go so you
man.
can take your final communion.
I mean, I'm not surprised that that was a thing.
That's wild to me. I was like, and again, I'm like, baby, that's witchcraft.
Yeah, it's
There's
very witchy.
so many
I thought
things. I'm like, we
I
are not
thought
so
you were
different.
I thought you were gonna say what like a famous legendary relic is several churches claim that they have Jesus's foreskin.
Not that.
Mm-hmm.
And
And someone and I think that a saint was like, "Oh yeah, he gave me his foreskin as a wedding ring." So that's a
okay,
thing
that's
that
super straight
happens.
behavior. Pop off.
Super normal stuff.
Super normal things best friends do.
Just totally regular stuff. Yeah. So, but I was like, the Catacomb Saints are just so spectacular. They're very cool. I'm excited to post some pictures of them on our Instagram.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I definitely recommend going out and checking. I actually like was going to buy the book over this weekend, but like all of the indie shops don't have it in stock right now. So I'm
Oh,
gonna keep hunting and see what I can find. It is available on Amazon, but I try not to buy books on Amazon. So
yeah. Same.
like you do. But yes, I would love to hear from anyone who has seen a catacomb saint, who is into them, who had a last rites cabinet or any other supernatural Catholic vibes going on. If you agree with me that Catholicism is incredibly goth, sound off, let me know.
Sound off.
uh, and I think no, there will be one more coming out before then, but we'll mention now just for anyone who's making plans that Midge and I are going to be at Midsummer Scream again this year.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna be there, take a look and definitely come say hi if you see
Come up
us.
there and see
We
us
love,
sometime.
yeah, come down and see us sometime. We love to talk to you. We love saying hi. We love it way more than getting messages that said I wanted to say hi, but I was nervous. I promise we're not scary, so
Yeah,
feel
we're
free to
just a
say hi.
couple of little goofy gals on the internet. We're
It's true.
come say hi. We also
Just
usually
out here talking about skeletons.
yeah, we also usually have stickers with us too for the pod. So if you see
Yes.
us, come say hi, take a picture, get a sticker. Tally ho.
Hold to do. But yeah, if you enjoyed our podcast, we would love it so much if you would take the time to give us a review. It really helps us out. You can leave those on Apple iTunes. You can leave comments on episodes on Spotify now. Or
Oh,
yes, I've been trying to publish them as I've been seeing them. We might go back through and read some of those. When we get a chance. If you are on a platform that doesn't let you leave a review, you can just go right ahead and DM one to us. And Midge has a review to share with us today.
oh, do. This is from Vivi Luru.
Ooh.
Spooky Warm Fuzzies, 5 stars. I discovered this podcast because of a Facebook Halloween group suggestion, which
Ooh.
love that. Thank you
Thank you,
for
friend.
suggesting us in a group. Keep doing that. We appreciate that. More often than not, I barely make it a few minutes into most podcasts as my tolerance level is rather low. Relatable. I instantly loved Penny and Midge. They have wonderful chemistry and great voices. It's truly like listening to friends. While I sometimes feel old when they discuss things they enjoyed in school, meanwhile, I was already grown and hanging in the goth industrial scene. Nice. I love the nostalgia, and more often than not, I learn new things from them. Thanks for giving such happy, spooky entertainment. Thank you, Vivi
Oh, yeah, thank
LaRue.
you, Vivi LaRue. Fabulous name. Love that. Um, all right. If you want to stick around with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod. There will be pictures of cool skeletons there, so it's a good follow, top S tier follow. And if you are looking for me, you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me all over the web at Midge Munster.
And until next time,
Good
good